All right, are you ready for story time with Aunt Mindy? Today's story is going to be Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, there was a little boy and his sister. Their names were Hansel, the brother, and Gretel, the sister. And their family was very poor. Their father and their mother were worried that he didn't have enough food left to feed their children anymore. So late one night, while Hansel and Gretel were laying in their beds, their mother and father made a plan that the next day they were going to drive deep into the woods to go cut down trees. And at the end of the day, they would pack up their cart and go home and leave Hansel and his sister Gretel out in the woods alone so that they would not have to see them starving anymore. But the parents didn't know that Hansel and Gretel were listening in their beds. And that night Hansel came up with a plan. In the morning he went out and picked up some smooth, shiny stones and put them in his pocket. And all along the path that they were taking into the deep, dark woods, Hansel was leaving these shiny stones behind so that they would be able to find their way home. But shh, they didn't tell their parents. And when they got to the place where their father was working all day long, Hansel and Gretel went off to play. And at the end of the day, Hansel and Gretel's parents packed up the cart and went home, leaving Hansel and Gretel alone. Gretel was very worried, but Hansel said, "Don't worry, sister. I have my plan, and we will be able to find our way home." So they followed the path of the shiny, smooth stones all the way back to their cabin in the woods, and they went sneaking back into their bed without their parents knowing. In the morning, their parents were very surprised to see them in their bed. We need to come up with a better plan. Before Hansel and Gretel woke up, the father and the mother got together and said, "Today we will have to go a different way than we've ever gone before, and go deeper into the woods than we've ever gone before. Then our children will not be able to find their way home." So they quickly woke up Hansel and Gretel and put them on the cart. They gave them the last crusts of bread that they had and set off into the deep, dark woods again. They went a different way, and they went farther than they've ever been before. And all along the way, Hansel left his breadcrumbs behind. He didn't have time to pick up smooth stones this time, but he was sure he would be able to find the breadcrumb trail and get back home again. Well, their father and their mother worked hard all day cutting down trees because that's the best that they could do. And Hansel and Gretel went off to play. At the end of the day, Hansel and Gretel's parents packed up the cart and went back home. And Hansel and Gretel were left alone in the deep, dark woods. Again, Gretel was very concerned. "Oh, Hansel, what will we do?" she asked. And Hansel said, "Don't worry, I've left us another trail to follow. Not with smooth, shiny stones this time, but with my breadcrumbs." So they looked all around on the ground, searching for the breadcrumb trail, but they couldn't find it. Oh no! The little forest animals had eaten up all the breadcrumbs. The birds, the rabbits, the squirrels and chipmunks, their trail was gone. They really could not find their way home this time, and it was getting late and dark and cold. So they huddled up together under a tree for warmth, and there they slept all that night, tired, alone, hungry, and scared. The next morning, when the sun came up and they started to warm up, they got up and started walking through the woods, searching for anything that looked like a path. anything that looked like a trail, anything that looked like it might lead them home. But nothing looked right. Hansel decided that he would just have to choose a direction and they would go that way. Then they walked, and they walked, and they walked until they thought they could walk no more. And up ahead, what did they see? A clearing in the woods with a little cabin. How exciting! Surely someone there could help them. So they went running up to that cabin, and they were thrilled to discover that this cabin was made out of candy, cakes, muffins, cookies, delicious treats for them to eat. And they started to eat the house. Well, a mean old green witch came to the door, and she said, "You go away. You can't eat my house." And Hansel and Gretel said, "Oh, we're so sorry. We didn't know that this was your house, and we are so very hungry. Could you possibly help us?" So that mean old green witch said, "All right, come inside. I'll give you a nice treat to eat," pretending to be kind. So Hansel and Gretel went with her inside the house, and she gave them a nice treat of milk and cookies, and asked Hansel and Gretel how they came to be there. So Hansel and Gretel, being good children, told her the whole story, how their parents had left them in the deep dark woods alone. And she thought, their parents don't want them anymore. I have a plan. And she took Hansel and threw him in a cage and locked the gate and made Gretel very worried. And she turned to Gretel and said, "If you ever want your brother Hansel to be freed again, what you need to do is work very hard for me. You will mop my floors, you will wash my dishes, you will do my laundry, you will clean all the pots and pans so that I can keep baking, and you will collect firewood to keep my oven burning so that I can bake all my sweets and treats." And so Gretel agreed that she would work hard so that one day the mean green witch would release her brother from his cage. Day after day, Gretel worked hard, but one day she walked into the kitchen, and there the mean green witch was, reading a cookbook about how to bake a little boy pie. Oh no, this made her very concerned for her brother Hansel. Maybe she wasn't going to release him after all. So she went over to Hansel's cage one time when it was quiet and said, "Hansel, every day she gives you sweets and treats to eat because she's trying to make you fat so that she can bake you in a little boy pie. You've got to trick her somehow. I know, she can't see very well. So when she asks to feel your finger, don't put your finger out of the gate. Stick out this old dry bone. She'll feel that and think you are still too thin and you won't get baked in the pie." So Hansel did what his sister told him to do. Every day when the mean green witch came to check on him, she would give him cakes and pies and sweets, and then she would check his finger to see if he was fat enough, and he would stick out that bone, and she would squeeze it and say, "No, still too thin." And Gretel would work hard every day, washing dishes, scrubbing floors, collecting firewood, keeping that oven warm so that the mean green witch could bake all of her treats. When one day Gretel came up with a plan how they could escape. One day she went out and collected lots of extra firewood and got that oven burning hotter than it had ever burned before. And when the mean green witch came in and asked if the oven was ready for her to bake her goods, Gretel said, "I'm not sure. Maybe you should go check." So the mean green witch went close to the oven, and when she opened the door, Gretel grabbed the key and shoved the witch inside and slammed the door behind her. And she quickly ran over and released Hansel from his cage. The two of them quickly packed up some food and ran off into the woods. They ran and they ran and they ran away from that cabin as far and as fast as they could. And they walked until they were too tired to walk anymore, and they sat down. When they sat down, they heard something faintly, very far off. Timber. That's the sound that someone makes when they've just cut down a tree. They were familiar with that because their father cut down trees. They decided to go toward that sound. They walked that way and they heard it again. Timber. A little bit louder that time. They were getting closer, so they walked that way again, and they heard that sound a little louder. Timber! Surely they would find help soon. They ran off in that direction as fast as they could until they found the man cutting down trees. Timber! He yelled, and there was a big crash of a tree right near them. They ran up to that man and said, "Is there any chance you know who our father is? He also is a woodsman who cuts down trees for a living. Is there any chance you've seen him? Is there any chance you can tell us how to get home? We've been lost and alone in the woods for so long." And he looked at Hansel and he said, "You do look familiar. Maybe I do know who your father is. He might be one of the new men working for our tree company. Come with me." So Hansel and Gretel went with that man, and he brought him to the man that he thought would look like Hansel. And sure enough, it was Hansel's father and Gretel's father, and they were so happy to be reunited. And the father said, "Hansel, Gretel, we have wonderful news. I've gotten a job with this company, and now we have plenty of money, and you can come back home today to live with me and your mother again." So Hansel and Gretel went home with their father, and they all lived happily ever after in their cabin in the woods. That's the end of this story. I hope you liked it, and I hope you come back and watch another video. Bye for now.